Hey everyone! Hey. Cock. It's time for Kings of King. Kings of King. I love that theme.
The guy already did it. You don't need to do it.
I can't do it. I can't carry a melody. I can't replicate a melody.
Me neither, man.
I can sometimes do the relative notes. That's bullshit. You can sing well. You know it. I don't have the ear. I sing around the house and Jen will chuckle to herself quietly.
I know that was going to happen because
Did she do that when you guys cohabitated?
No, we never cohabitated though.
Didn't you? I thought you were roommates.
No,
at some
we were
point.
very
Okay.
close.
In college.
I think she lived at the Czar, so
but at different times.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. So it was just a different time. But she went to UCSD music, man. Like UCSD music's
right.
for real. And
right. So she chuckles and I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, well,
there's nothing on.
That was just really it just wasn't
really pitchy.
The notes of that song or whatever. It's fine though. I love you. And I'm like, it sounds good to me. I literally can't hear. She's like, it's not it's you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But
and she's like, well, you got to practice with a piano and your ear would develop.
It's just a discerning eye that she has developed over time. Here's the thing, just like she said, if you're having fun, who the fuck cares? You're just singing she can chuckle, you can enjoy yourself, everything's great.
And we do have fun, and we do so for you professionally. That's right. It's Kings of King, where we have fun in and on and around and under 6 feet under the works of Stephen King as they have been adapted to film and screen. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. But yeah, that's what we do. And we do it in a number of segments. Is it time to get into the first segment or do we have more business to get out of the way?
Did we even say our names?
Wait.
We got distracted.
Yeah, you're Abe Epperson.
I'm Abe Epperson. He's Michael Swam. All right, let's go.
No, there's one more.
What?
It's The Dead Zone.
Oh, it's The Dead Zone. The Dead Zone,
Dead Zone
1983. Director.
And that reminds me of even more business. But so go ahead. 1983.
David Cronenberg.
1983, David Cronenberg, The Dead Zone.
That's kind of the important part. Jason Bohm wrote the screenplay.
But before you
Adaptation?
pull us into the segment, because I would have to honor it, because that's the rule of Kings of King.
That's true.
We're not ready to start the segment because I want to address that at the end of last episode, which I would like to keep doing.
Oh, right.
I want to tell the whole saga real quick.
Okay.
And I also want to check in on another thing. So this is going to be a beefy intro. Forgive me. But, they call me Michael Beefy Intro Swaim.
They do.
We wanted to watch No Smoking, which is loosely based on Quitters, Inc., a great Stephen King short story. And it's an Indian film. And we couldn't find it anywhere. Actually, we did find it one place, which is a Bollywood VOD channel you can subscribe to and watch it there. But other than that, we couldn't find it anywhere easily accessible, including YouTube. And we just felt like people who listen to the podcast probably want to watch along, or at least have the opportunity, if their interest is piqued, to check out the flick. So we decided to go with The Dead Zone. We scrambled. Actually, that's not true.
No,
that's the other
true.
part of the song. Abe, take it away. What happened next?
Well, we wanted to watch Lawnmower Man because we thought that would be a fun setup to it. And some of you King heads will probably know that is actually not, it's actually famously not one of his things. It's not really an adaptation. It said Stephen King's Lawnmower Man. But
in the initial marketing,
But once he saw it was so different. The adaptation was so different. And I think he felt that the film was so bad that he wanted to take his name off of it. And by doing so, the lawsuit ensued that became very famous because no writer had kind of won in that kind of instance for a very long time, for like decades, in terms of like beating a production for saying like, this is not, you're breaking the law by running this and stuff like that. And they famously sided with him, took his name off of it. But by that point, promotional stuff had already come out that they were, the production was delinquent on it. So he got additional money on top of trying, like, officially taking his name off of it. So it was like a whole story. It went on for like multiple years, and
what you call confusion in the marketplace.
And it's
all the way to us.
Yeah.
We were confused.
Because, I always remembered, I was like, it's like Stephen King, and I know that he has that short story about it.
He has a short story called
The
Lawnmower Man.
Man.
Apparently, the only things they have in common is that someone kills someone with a lawnmower. Other than that, completely different subject matter.
And I knew about the lawsuit slightly, but I always thought it was kind of like an Alan Smithy. Like it was just like, agree to disagree, walk away, give me some money, we're going to be fine. But after reading about how much Stephen King really hates it, I think what we ultimately decided is that if Stephen King were ever to listen to this and see that Lawnmower Man was on the list of films that we're covering on him, he would be kind of peeved about that, since he personally feels it's not, up to snuff in terms of, the Kings of King.
Yeah, we didn't make the Coen brothers to cover Suburbicon,
Yeah.
Same situation here.
I think so.
But although I think they had kind of the last laugh, because on his Wikipedia page in the list of adaptations by Stephen King, The Lawnmower Man is featured.
Yeah.
I will say, in case it piques anyone's interest to watch Lawnmower Man, first of all, the director's cut is far superior to the theatrical release, although I would say both movies are pretty bad.
They're pretty bad, yeah.
Here's a note that will make you decide to either watch it or not if you don't know Lawnmower Man. As I was right before we decided to bail, I wrote like a scattering of notes to keep track of what was happening in the plot. One early on before we pulled the plug was, cybernetic chimp is injured, takes refuge with slow-witted man.
Right. Who immediately calls him Cybo Man. Like, does not skip a beat. It's like, absolutely, that's who you are. I love that.
You are Cybo Man.
Yeah, it's Pierce Brosnan is actually trying to bring it in that film, to be honest with you.
A lot of shirtless Pierce Brosnan and he's really he's scrawnier than he is than latter era Pierce Brosnan. Jen, again, if you don't know, my lovely girlfriend and live in person, was walking by the couch and is like, he's not cute in that movie. And she normally goes for a Pierce.
Yeah. She's fierce.
You have no opinion?
No, she's just fierce for Pierce, but not in this one.
Yeah, it was too much torso body hair, I think. She likes a smooth man.
That's it's no more or less than GoldenEye, I'll tell you that much. He's just a little bit more beefier. But he has the same
he's
tuft.
beefier.
If you
he's
remember,
like a good Swaim intro.
When he fights Xeno he's got a full... We could talk about Pierce Brosnan's relative chest hair for weeks, but I'll just say it's pretty similar, and that's surprising to me.
Such practices are banned where we are now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Because we're under the dome.
Our best guess puts the dome at 20,000 feet, sir.
Did he just call it a dome?
You think we might be stuck in here a while?
Under the Dome, our first segment. This is the elevator synopsis of the movie. And so we're
Lawnmower Man.
Yeah, no,
wait.
The Dead Zone.
No smoking. That's right.
No smoky, the Dead Zone. So, I don't know. This one's pretty easy, right? I mean, we can kind of join. Do you want to do a...
Do you want to rock, paper, scissors for it verbally?
No, but if that's what you want to do.
Then do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it?
I'll take parts of
Your Highness.
it. I'll take parts of it. You can take parts of it. It'll be fine.
Okay.
So, interestingly enough, this is one of the first Castle Rock pictures that we get.
By that, do you mean the production company,
No.
or that it is set in Castle Rock?
It's set in Castle
Okay.
Rock, and it's one of the earlier books by... it's 450 pages. I didn't know that. One earlier books.
Stephen King is his name.
Yeah. But this takes place in Castle Rock, which, will come up later in later episodes, and obviously later, works by King. This guy named John Smith, or Johnny Smith, which is kind of, come on. Right. That's a pretty, let's just run with whatever.
Isn't that also the Pocahontas colonizer guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's also isn't he the capitalism guy? I don't remember. God.
We're probably lousy with John Smith at this point.
Yeah. So he's a school teacher, and he's in a relationship with Sarah Bracknell. And Sarah comes up later. After he takes her out on a date, they go to a fair, his head starts hurting while they're on a roller coaster ride. And then...
Hey, yeah, what did that have to do with anything?
I don't know.
I just have to
Spoilers.
point out that doesn't do anything or impact anything. That's weird. Okay, keep going.
Well, I mean, we'll have to unpack that, but that's a
Feels
different
like a
segment.
cut scene or
Yeah.
something, sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a strange beat. It's definitely a loud beat. It's something that says, hey, here's a headache. And you're like already probably know what the movie's kind of about. Having watched the trailer, you know, like Christopher Walken is like, who plays John Smith or Johnny Smith. He becomes psychic by the end of this movie. That's probably all you know. Unless you read the book at this point. So audiences were probably going like, what's that headache thing? Is that going to be a part of the psychic thing? Does not come up. That's fine. They go back to her place after the date, and she asks if he wants to like spend the night. And he says, nah, I'm going to like wait it out. I think that like some things are worth waiting for. As he drives home, he has a horrible car accident with like a milk, like a, what do you call it? A milk truck, like a milk
Semi-truck,
a semi-truck that has a big
18-wheeler.
thing of milk. I thought that was funny that it was milk.
As he says in a line I enjoy, that I made a note of, God threw an 18-wheeler at me, knocked me into oblivion for 5 years.
It's spot on. Yeah, and so he that happens, and he's now in a coma. And then we awake, and we don't really know he's in a coma yet. We find out from his doctor, Dr. Sam Wyzak, I believe. Wyzak. That 5 years have passed. His parents are there, and they're like, yeah, it's been 5 years. Sarah's now married, has a kid. So Johnny has to deal with the fact that his like limbs are atrophied. He's been his whole life for 5 years has been on hold because he's been in a coma. And he discovers that he has new psychic powers. And by basically touching their hand, it has to specifically be that. It can't be like, it has to be like he grabs their hand and like holds it for like.
It doesn't happen
like
when he
10 or
just
15
brushes
seconds.
against you.
No.
It's interesting.
It's-
the rules
yeah.
are interesting.
And he finds out when he touches a nurse's hand, her daughter is at home right now in a fire, or soon to be. And he realizes that he can tell the future by touching someone. And it usually is traumatic events or the death of someone close or their own death. At this point, we don't really know. This is just the first instance of it. He also sees that later in a later scene, the second beat of like what his psychic abilities are, is that his own doctor, after he touches his doctor, that his mother is alive. His mother that he's thought for a long time to have died since like World War II, I think. And he also finds out that there's the third beat, I believe, is that a reporter who's asking him about his abilities after all this stuff, or after the saving the daughter from the fire, that his sister killed herself, and that he was like kind of to blame for it. And he kind of just spouts that out at the reporter. And so there's a whole scene where the reporter like runs out. So I think what we're doing here is we're showing like, there's one case of he saves someone. There's one case of he can look into the deep past of someone and almost display, like tell them there's been a lie that has happened to you. And the third one is, you have done a transgression and I know your secret. So we know that the like width and breadth at this point of his psychic abilities seem to be not centered on one particular thing. Like I have to save one person. He gets kind of the juiciest information out of your mind.
You always touch the hand. No telling what you'll understand are the rules.
Okay. Yeah. So then Johnny's mom dies from a heart attack. And
important note, he touches her hand.
Right.
He holds her hand in the hospital and nothing happens, right? Is that because she's dead at that moment?
I don't know if that was because they wanted us. I wonder what the book says, because I wondered if it was like he was, she's dead and he's not getting anything, or
she's
he's
also
like
sort of
refusing to read
senile
her.
at that point.
Yeah. I feel like we get like because there's a very specific, it's actually very off-putting for me. I hated the sounds and everything when he actually gets like the epileptic editing of the, it says like it'll have a scream sound effect and then a cut to Christopher Walken's face as he goes like, oh, and then it cuts to footage. Like the way in which he sees and has the psychic ability and it tells us through montage is very off-putting to me. I was very bothered by how they did it. It was, I don't know what it was. I think that's a testament to Cronenberg. But because we didn't get that from that, I thought that means that he must not be getting a read from anybody, right?
I assume he's not getting a read from her. I just think it's odd because his psychic abilities are clearly not tied to like neuropathy, if you know what I mean. Or I don't even know if that's the right word. No. Neurology. Because like
if
he's not reading,
dead, I guess.
He's not reading from Dr. Wyzak's brain. It's not psychic like ESP person to person because he looks into the past. It's like magical scrying.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand why you'd have a scene where he gets the chance with psychic powers to touch his senile mother's hand. She's unable to communicate what she'd like to, right? If she could. And she's about to die. And you have the ability to bypass that path of communication and see something that's symbolic. What a wasted opportunity. You don't have any vision when you touch your dying mom's hand. Come on. Even if I don't understand the rules of it, but I also feel like it's just like a big swing and a miss, or it's not swinging. It's such an easy win. I guess.
I think there's more to unpack there. I have other thoughts. Yeah. So the next thing that happens, it's kind of the end of Act 1, as people find out that he has a gift. The sheriff arrives at his place and is asking
Tom
about
Skerritt, baby.
Yeah, Tom Skerritt. There's a serial killer around, and he wants Johnny to help, see if he can help. But
the Castle Rock killer.
But Johnny is like kind of recluse and doesn't like the idea that it's a gift. He's very angry with God and with just his lot in the whole, like, I was in a coma, my life ended, I just want to be left alone. Sarah, who is married and has a kid now, she visits and they have like kind of I guess just a date in his house. It starts off seemingly like they're just like reconnecting and just like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? But it's very clear very quickly that Sarah has like this agenda to like, well, we're just going to fuck. And then once we fuck, that will be the end of it. Right. And
it's like this final goodbye.
Yeah. It's like, I know you got really screwed over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I recognize that you are like in pain because of that. And so I'm going to do this for you, which I guess is nice, but also obviously Johnny's very, I think this whole thing is like, no one should be doing
I think
this.
it's predictable from her vantage that won't work out.
Yeah, exactly. She should know better. And Johnny should be not like a whiny little, like it sucks, but that's, you don't get to choose that.
Well, they have the added edge that he's religious and comes from a religious family and background, very religious. That's why he saved himself. So like the idea that he drove home in the rain so as to not be tempted to fuck her. So and now he does get to, and he's like, it's too late though. Everything's fucked. I think he's mad, like you said, at God more than anything and his loyalty to God, because he's like, this, in the midst of it, that is an interesting aspect, is the religious person who suffers a horrendous turn of fate and is like, why me? Yeah.
Me and
why
God
Joe?
on hunky dory.
Why send these country bears to ruin my life? When you're just walking. Yeah, minding your own walking.
Minding your own walking or driving.
I'm just walking here.
Forgive me. Do you remember why he changes his mind about joining the sheriff? Do you know why? I feel like there's a beat, but from what I recall, or in my notes, it's just like he changes his heart about the murders.
His dad sort of gently convinces him.
That's right.
His dad talks him down. His elderly father talks him down just by having a nice conversation it's nice to do good things and it's good to help people if you can. And
like
blah,
he
blah,
sees
blah.
that he's lonely and such.
Like, all right. And a point you skipped. Well, I guess I can bring it up in a later segment, but it happens, so it's kind of under the dome. He also looks out the window during this period and sees a guy mercilessly beating his son. It never comes up again and nothing happens.
That
it just
might
happens.
be the beat.
I'm just saying.
That might be the beat, honestly, because that's like causes a change of heart, right?
Yeah, I just don't understand why in real world terms something doesn't happen following that. Like why he never interacts with that guy or does anything.
He's looking on, he's like, man,
and he's like, that guy beating his
victims.
kid is a good symbol for me to catalyze a change.
I should help these people. And just the child goes like, please help somebody help. He's like, that reminds me.
That reminds me to help some other unrelated people.
Just like, never know. You never know. Really opened my mind. All right. So, he decides finally to help.
They find a fresh body. He holds the body's hand and witnesses the moida. Including the face of the killer and everything. It's amazing how quick. He's like, it's Dodd. Dodd killed her. I saw him.
And Dodd
Done
is
deal.
Dodd is
a police officer in the town.
Yeah, he's a deputy. He's like literally there. So Dodd like hightails it out of the gazebo that they're all at and is like, okay.
Repeat, suspect is fleeing the gazebo.
And he's like, I love the response of, he's like, where's Dodd? And he's like, he stole your car. Like no one stopped this guy. Even though I guess they didn't know at that time, it's just hilarious to me that if a police officer is like, what are they doing over there? Well, the psychic guy is going to try to figure out who's the killer. Anyway, I got to go for unrelated reasons.
Yeah. So Dodd puts on a rubber suit and jams his head into a pair of scissors.
Yeah, that's a weird way to die.
Well, he is... Obviously, his killings are all with that pair of scissors, so he has a bizarre fascination with the scissors.
Right.
I'm guessing I don't know why the rubber suit. Just to make it Cronenbergian sexual, I think.
I guess. And
so the sheriff and Walken burst in. They shoot the mom in the fracas. He touches her hand, and he's like, you knew, you covered it up. So it's interestingly episodic. He just kind of has
the short
psychic adventures because now that's resolved and other stuff happens.
Right. The book itself is kind of episodic, and they tried to do that justice. I give a lot of credit to the filmmakers. I think if that's the story, that should be the story.
So some pipe they've been quietly laying in the background is that Martin Sheen is running for Senate. And Martin Sheen is this guy, Greg Stilson, and you just see like campaign shit for him in the background throughout.
Yeah.
And at this point, that takes the focus, right? Is this where the switchover happens?
Yeah, it is kind of. There's a sequence where he lives in a more isolated, like he's tutoring kids. It's the hockey sequence.
Oh yeah, there's like a happy time where things are fine.
I mean, kind of. He just chooses not to use his power. He's also, you can tell his health is really starting to wane.
Yes, which gives rise to, I think, the funniest scene where Dr. Sam Wyzak comes and says, now listen, I've researched things like this.
Right.
And it turns out that psychic powers drain your life force. How the fuck did he find that out?
Yeah.
And he comes in, he's like, that's how it works. I'm sure of it. It just is such a weirdly unearned confidence. But he's like, so here's how the magic works. And it's true. I mean, we believe it by movie rules. I just think it's nuts. But anyway, and at the same time, so he's not using his power, which allows him to be a little more virile. And he's tutoring Chris, a perfectly normal kid, even though his rich dad thinks something's wrong with him. He seems perfectly fine.
His dad is so weird, man.
Yeah, and his dad is just like a rich muckety muck, which is how he runs into Greg Stilson because he's such a rich guy that Greg Stilson is haranguing him to be a donor.
Yeah, and he's just really fascinated with like him his son playing hockey. Like, it's just like, this is what you do, and you listen to me, and I'm gonna be a dick about it.
Trying to make him a man.
Which is a very typical Stephen King dad archetype, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so he's crying. Why is he crying? I just wrote down the line. Chris says, "Why you crying, Johnny?"
Oh, he's crying at the door because, like, so Sarah is brought up again because Sarah and her new husband are like essentially canvassing the town for trying to get people to vote for Stilson.
Wait for it. It's serendipitous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I went there.
All right.
It's my podcast. I do what I want.
Hell yeah.
They drop by because they're canvassing for Stilson. He sees him, and then he says to Chris, read the part of The Raven about Lenore never coming back. And he reads it and he cries. It's like making yourself cry intentionally. And the kid goes, "Why are you crying, Johnny?" And he says, "Come over here." And he touches the kid.
Hugs the boy.
And he foresees, which, by the way, he does not grab his hand, I don't think. I think he
No, he
hugs
grabs
him.
the top of his head. So it's just contact. He just chooses to, like, grab onto people's hands weirdly all the time.
Well, he foresees he's going to die by drowning in a hockey uniform, so he makes him not do hockey, which pisses his dad off.
Or tells him, yeah.
Yeah. And then he ends up... when does he touch? Because this is the first time roundabout here. Oh, he sees an election event for Stilson out the window, which again is pretty serendipitous. I feel like this bit relies a lot on serendipity, but I guess if you have psychic powers, you could also argue that you subconsciously end up in the right place at the right time. See, I'm doing the work for them.
Right.
He shakes Stilson's hand at a campaign event.
At the rally, yeah.
And sees Stilson in the future deciding to push the button and launch the nukes that will wipe out life on Earth.
Yeah,
and that he becomes president
World War III or
far in the
something.
future.
Yeah.
And he then, after a
which in
heart-to-heart
83
chat
is like,
with Dr. Sam,
that's like, that was like a fear. We just got off of that, you know, like that was, I think everyone had assumed Cold War shit, you know?
Well, during the Cold War period, which this came out during the tail end of, there was an incredibly heightened, I don't know if our younger listeners are aware, but, you know, things like duck and cover and klaxons in your town ringing whenever we thought there might be a nuclear bomb incoming and going to fallout shelters. Nuclear devastation was like the Holocaust and the atrocity that they were all waiting nervously to happen. Abe and I grew up after that, but not too long after.
Yeah.
And so now the new one's climate change, which is... I am very, very healthily afraid of, but nuclear war could still happen, but I feel like it's less top of mind. But man, there's a period where all sci-fi stories are about whether the bombs are going to drop or not. Right. And I mean in book form and film form.
Right.
Vonnegut is a big nuclear Holocaust guy as well. So The Stand, which we'll get to. So anyway, where are we at? So he resolves after a heart-to-heart with his doctor to assassinate her. And then what, Abe?
Well, yeah, he decides to get a bolt action rifle and to show up to the next rally, essentially. And he takes aim. Sarah's there with her child on like the on the stage. And so when he gets an option, he fires at Stilson. And Stilson immediately grabs like the nearest baby, which
is
happens
Danny.
to be Sarah's baby, and holds him as a human shield. You know, kind of like, and I think you kind of hear in the audio, he's like egging him on, like, "Nah, you can't fire at me." He's like a real piece of shit.
I got a baby, see?
Yeah, exactly. And so obviously Johnny is not going to fire at the child, but then a photographer, who by the way is played by Martin Sheen's son.
Yeah. Saw that.
The third Estevez, yeah. He takes a photo of Stilson holding the baby. And then basically not the Secret Service, because he's not elected yet. He's just trying to get it in the Senate.
But his thug Sonny.
But his thugs fire and mortally wound Johnny, who, as he falls down from like the top level of, like, I guess it's a church, right? when he lands, he touches Stilson's hand again, and now there's a new premonition, and it's that Martin Sheen looks at the cover of a Newsweek, and it has the photo that we just saw the photographer taking of him like dangling a baby in front of him as a human shield. And it basically says like why Stilson is done.
No future for Stilson.
No future for Stilson. And then he grabs a pistol and blows his brains out. Cuts back to Christopher Walken smiling on the ground saying, "You're finished." He feels satisfied that, that we're not going to have a nuclear war. Sarah kind of runs over as Stilson and his thugs like try to find the guy, the photographer. They kind of like run out. Sarah runs to Johnny, who's basically about to die, and says she loves him. And then that's the end of the movie.
End. And it feels like that. The end. Like
it really is quick.
It's abrupt.
It's like, and fire, and dead, and then realization. You're like, oh, okay, all these beats are happening. There's no denouement. The denouement is just the realization that it's over.
There's not even crossfade to
post.
Dr. Sam Wyzak at the grave
Saying
and
he
then
really
crossfade
was
to credits. There's nothing. Nothing. It's a dead zone. All right.
The dead zone, I think, if I recall from the book.
Save it for the... That's unpacking. I think
That's unpacking, but that's not next.
No, what's next is Skeleton Crew.
Skeleton Crew.
Something in the mist! Shut the doors! Shut the doors!
It's the Spooky Bone Parade, where we talk about anything related to, I think it's real brief this time. Well, there's just one thing to talk about, which is that it's directed by David Cronenberg, right? That's the main thing?
You got
so we talk about the cast and crew, people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's got the cast, there hasn't been a lot of, it's got Walken, it's got Sheen. There's a few other people of note, but I wouldn't say that there's a lot of, this is 80s, early 80s cinema. So it's not really that, it's not trying to do like, oh wow, they like developed a new like technology for this movie or anything like that. So there's nothing of note to think of. I will mention that this is the film that sandwiches two huge Cronenbergs, came out the same year as Videodrome.
It's a flesh sandwich.
Right. And then this is his film before The Fly. So in 1983 to 1985-ish time, this is when he's really becoming, it's Cronenberg is like legit, and he's getting money to do these kinds of things.
That's very interesting, because my major takeaway that applies to, it's very transparent. Misery was very transparent, but Misery felt in the acting choices and the way it was handled in certain respects. You can listen to our Misery episode. Super ambitious still, or competent to a level of polish that was like, yeah. This I think feels transparent, like any decent TV production from this era. It just like, it didn't cause problems or make waves. It looked fine and it felt fine. I did find the editing interesting. That's more for a later segment. But just as to Cronenberg's direction, I just wanted to say I do think it's a very interesting beat, because Videodrome is very fleshy and body horror weird. And so is The Fly. I think this is Cronenberg's flirtation with Videodrome was enough of a hit that I have mainstream interest. Let me make a mainstream film. And I think you feel that lack of fit and that lack of passion a little bit. It's the beat between him becoming so powerful in Hollywood, powerful enough that he could do what he does, which is The Fly. Like The Fly is a return to form. I feel like this is in between Cronenberg movies. He tried his hand at a more standard movie.
Speaking of Cronenberg, there's a method that he used that was actually not his idea, but Christopher Walken's idea, which is that, remember the sequence I was talking about earlier where I was like, it's very off-putting because like the The sound effect is very grating. It's when when Johnny goes into like
when he has visions,
the psychic visions, and the way in which they accomplish that is to shoot it without sound. David Cronenberg off screen fired a Magnum pistol with blanks to make Christopher Walken flinch, and that's something that Christopher Walken wanted. So that's another just collaboration. That's the way they chose to do that. Just of note, I thought.
Yeah, still better than Herzog and what's his name? Pulling guns on each other in the jungle.
Klaus.
Kinski, that's right. But I do think it's more than is necessary, which is funny. Like, it's not that hard to flinch disconcertingly. I think Walken just thought it would be fun.
All I'll say is that for me, it was very effective. Those sections there, this is not like you said, a body horror. There's not a lot of gore or anything like that. And it's still a very off-putting movie at times.
It's more like a Twilight Zone where you're waiting for the twist
really
and the
is.
twist happens and you're like, that was a pretty good ride.
Right, exactly. This is Stephen King's first book to reach #1 on the bestseller list.
That's so interesting too, because the other thing I wanted to talk about in the Skeleton Crew segment, because it's where we talk about King himself. We've recently covered a few movies that I think uncover, and I really like, because this podcast, if in case you're unaware, grew out of the Coen brothers, and something we noticed about the Coen brothers is there are themes, for example, crimes that involve guns. They do not shy away from, hey, that'll ratchet up the tension. Someone's going to shoot someone. You know what I mean? Someone stole money. But other than those simple things like transferals of wealth to represent the stakes or, to set up the drama, man, they're various. Like, man, their films seem to be about many different aspects of being alive. And it still blows my mind. Whereas this series covers adaptations by all different directors and creators. And yet at their core, they all do homage to the mind of Stephen King. And I do think we're seeing him cleave closer to themes and motifs. Like, there are Stephen King ingredients that I didn't realize were so omnipresent. And this one notably avoids a lot of them. But it does still have the English teacher character. And Stephen King, of course, was an English teacher before he became so wealthy that he is just Stephen King now. But before that, his one job was he was an English teacher. And so I think there's a little of himself in this. That's something we've tracked, is there is a lot of autobiography. Of course, the location. He likes to write about areas he knows. But by and large, I thought it was notable how this also feels like Stephen King trying something new and different. And it's interesting that you note that for him, it was his smashing success. Like, his attempt to do a more mainstream, what about just like a ripping yarn that would be a Black Mirror, or a Twilight Zone? And it sounds like in the book form, at least, it killed, right? So there you go.
Yeah, it's almost interesting that he chose the title The Dead Zone. I mean, I feel like this is a good segue.
It makes it sound scarier than it is. Yeah.
Is this a good segue into our next section? That's
true. Good call.
Well, let's enter it.
Bill, if you'll come with me, you'll float too. You'll float too.
The Living Zone. No.
The Living Zone. This is where we talk about scene work themes, symbolism. What you just said reminds me, because is this a horror movie?
I would call it a supernatural thriller. Yeah.
And I think that that's probably one of the reasons that it did well on for him as a book, because King, who had, Cujo and, he's penning a lot of.
Ooh, I could read the shit out of this on a plane.
Yeah.
On a long plane ride. Yeah.
This is not, even though it's called The Dead Zone, which to me smacks of like a horror kind of thing. Like, am I going to be reading about people who are dead? What is a dead zone? So it seemed like he was still trying to say, like, yeah, it's like Stephen King, he's still kind of the master of horror, but also this is not really a horror. So anyone can kind of read it and still be fine with it. And I think that was a very smart choice, because it still feels like King, but I think it probably opened up a whole market for him. when it was, clearly not, marketed as like a square horror.
And I think even the film has had a lasting impact. Like, I didn't realize, I mean, when you consider the score and the look of the font and everything, like Stranger Things credit sequence owes this title sequence. Like, there are...
Oh, yeah.
Dead Zone did, the movie itself did join the dialectic and I think have an impact on the film space. I just still think, and this is my major takeaway from the film this time, I'd seen it once before, but now with like more of an appreciation of Cronenberg's voice and just more of a focused eye on what we're doing here with this whole King's a King thing, I feel like you feel the lack of confidence or lack of maybe passion, lack of overwhelming passion. I don't know. The movie feels like an exercise in competency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I might put it a little different. I think it comes from the source material. It's clearly more fascinating. Like, let's look at it. And look about, like, remember when we were talking about the symbolism of it? Because you get to see, like, oh, this is how the sewer, this is how water keeps coming up. This is how Pennywise, like, kind of attacks. The through line in this movie and in this story is just the idea, the high concept that he's psychic. So there's not, Stephen King didn't really try to hit it from the angle of, like, I'm going to have some symbolic through lines. In fact, he just kind of had an episodic where he's like, this happens, this happens, this happens. We don't really get a strong antagonist, even though he takes down a serial killer. It all happens very quickly. Like, the
serial killer is not an overarching antagonist.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh shit, there's some shit. All right, I'll like arrive and help you out.
And you know what it ends up?
Oh, it's that guy. Oh, it's over.
You know what it ends up really feeling like, especially the middle part where he's a bitter sad sack walking on a cane who magically looks into the middle distance and then solves your problem. House. He's House. It's like if someone got the superpower of being Dr. House.
Right. Yeah, it feels that way. And so there's not a lot of, like, I thought it was interesting that he chose not to have like symbolic through lines, because something that I've noticed is that in episodic kind of literature or movies, you can easily do that thematic resonance. Like you mentioned Black Mirror. It's very easy for, a Twilight Zone or a Black Mirror to have a very specific, like, this is what I'm saying about, like, this is how technology, for example, often harms us more than helps.
Have a statement. Yeah.
And so because of that, I thought that this would have more of a statement. After rewatching it, because like you, I'd seen it when I was a lot younger. We had it on VHS. But because of it's not like a movie that like kid would watch, because it's kind of boring, a lot of conversations. And it's kind of horrifying in a weird way. It's like somehow misses the mark on a lot of like things that young Abe would not be interested in.
Sure.
But yeah, when you actually sit down and watch it, I was anticipating seeing a lot of symbolism that I would not have. I was like, oh, I was just a kid and I missed that. I still could be missing it. And I encourage people who have read the book and say like, oh, the book has this very clearly. The movie didn't do a great job of it, but it's a little bit in there. Point that out because
he can do that. Right. Like King, you know what I mean? The Shining is likewise fraught with subtext. That's why I describe it as an airport book. What I think of as an airport book are ripping yarns that don't have subtext, because then you can just enjoy it and it's like popcorn.
Enjoy the high concepts.
Yeah.
And take a ride on the idea about someone being psychic.
And I also found myself groping for some kind of message. The one instance I highlighted was the moment when he says, when on TV they reveal the Castle Rock killer, she was 15 years old and the body was raped, as they all have been. That's when we, the audience, learned that the Castle Rock killer doesn't just kill you, he rapes you and stabs you to death, and his targets are underage women.
Kind of buried the lead on that one.
Yeah, they bury the lead, and then but I think it's for shock value. You go, holy shit. Right. But then it's interesting to me that this is arguably the only satirical move the movie makes, because it is not a satire, but it's almost like it's such low-hanging satirical fruit that they just took it. The guy goes, and now to Ron with sports and weather, and the shift is so intentional that it's like, look how society is alienated, right? And I get that
Verhoeven move,
but it's such a that literally that beat of a news anchor saying something horrible and then saying, and now sports and weather really cheerfully, has been done so much that I feel like they almost stumbled into it. And I found myself wondering, oh, is that it? Is that the satirical thread? And then trying to map that to the rest of the movie and being like, I think they just took a low-hanging fruit thing there. I don't think there's meaning in the film.
Which is surprising to me because Cronenberg almost 100% of the time has that. That's why I'm like eager to see if someone found something that I just didn't. Because I don't know if there's like is the psychic nature symbolic of something,
right?
You know,
although it did raise two questions of quintessential to human life that I thought were fascinating, like the concept, but they both spin off of the premise, like you said. The concept at the end that no one will ever know that he was right. He will go down in history as a guy who thought he was psychic, so he assassinated a senator. That's cool to me. The conundrum of, would you kill Hitler? By the way, though, I got to observe, how the fuck does Dr. Sam Wyzak not know what's going to happen? He's seen that he's psychic over and over. And then they meet and he goes, if you could kill Hitler before he rose to power, would you do it? And he goes like, I don't know, man. I care about you and blah, 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 and some other news about my family.
How is his next question not who's Hitler?
And he goes, but you didn't answer my question. Would you kill Hitler? And he goes, yes, I would have to kill Hitler. And he doesn't say, why do you ask?
Yeah. Is it because you know a Hitler? Is it maybe because you touched someone and found out there's a Hitler?
Who'd you touch who's Hitler, man?
I'm pretty sure I need you to tell me who that guy is.
But in the classic way, the reason I compare it to sci-fi short stories is like a good sci-fi short story will often leave you with, ooh, that is a heck of a conundrum. Would you do it? Could, knowing that legacy, we're all going to die, and part of what comforts us while we're alive is legacy, or like, hopefully my aggregate impact on other humans who live on after me is positive, and that's good. What if everyone will think you're an asshole crazy person and all you did was prevent something bad, but no one will ever know for sure if that would have happened.
That needs to be the heart, like what you're saying, it needs to be the heart of the question, the conundrum. It's funny to me that
he doesn't really struggle with it. He just goes for it.
Because it's not a question that needs much struggling. That's the thing, is like, I don't know. When I think about something like, we talked about, what was it? What was the name of the Ethan Hawke time travel movie that we covered?
Predestination. With Vanessa.
Like, there's a, like when you have a high concept like that and you have like literally, I'm glad you mentioned the Hitler conversation, because the Hitler conversation is kind of the psychological question at the heart of Dead Zone, which is, what would you do in order to prevent, like, would you take your own life in order to prevent,
would you take your own name and reputation and life? Yeah.
And that to me is like, when we talk about sci-fi and we talk about like high concept literature, that isn't a great question, only because, like, from a story perspective, only because it doesn't inherently have conflict. It's very easy for someone to say, no, I'd never take my life for anything. It's very easy for someone to say, of course, he's fucking Hitler. I'm going to kill that guy. Are you going to, and you would die? Yeah, I would die. It's like it's pretty cut and dry to me. There's not a lot of conflict in the question, because there's not a lot of cases where it's like, on one side you have Hitler, which we think of, and then on the other side you have you.
That's an interesting secret key to storytelling that I think you're sort of dancing around, is like, to a film that asks or raises a question that is very binary, that is sort of a yes or no question with very little gray area, is inherently the best you're going to get is a ripping yarn that's disposable and you forget it eventually, but it's fun while it lasted.
Yeah.
Movies
nice to
that
see
we
play
take
out.
as thinkers or dense or haunting almost always are raising a question where if you asked the question in conversation, it could have 1,000 different answers because it's fraught with gray area.
And it's also a question that the more your protagonist goes through the process of answering that question
From
the
different
more
vantages and
muddled-
taking different positions. Yeah.
the more muddled and complex and kind of not easy to resolve occurs.
And then
know,
you get one of those movies that's hailed as like, it asks all the right questions, but it doesn't provide any easy answers. Yeah.
Right. It's all a spectrum. But I guess all I'm saying is, and I'm not here to say that like we shouldn't have these binary questions and that means it's a bad story. It's just one, atypical for King in a certain way. But I do also understand that King would do it because he's more about finding a concept that is just like knocks it out of the park just because it's like a high concept that's cool to think about.
No, some of them are not very condensable into elevator pitch format. And even more so as you see him become the most powerful novelist on earth, and he doesn't have to pitch to anyone. Then you get really indulgent stuff like Desperation and the Regulators, you know?
Yeah, and the binary question has been around forever too. It's not like this falls on Stephen King's footsteps. Think of something like a tale that we tell all the time, like Robin Hood. Robin Hood is a great example because it's like a very cut and dry binary system, right? It's like, no, of course you side on Robin Hood's side. And Robin Hood is rarely tested in those tales. Like, if anything, maybe he's shown more like pushback from the Sheriff of Nottingham or whatnot, but ultimately he's on the side of, righteousness.
Right. But one more step grounded movie or telling of Robin Hood would have a scene in there where you cut to the Sheriff of Nottingham and you see that the sheriff really is trying his best on a limited budget to serve the people, and Robin Hood constantly stealing is making it impossible to feed people or something. And you'd be like, it's not so simple, right? I love that you could tell the same story at any gradation of the spectrum if you want.
I mean, that's season, what is it, 4 of The Wire? Like, that is just that's Carcetti, like that's Carcetti
where we're
trying
like,
to do the
here's
best thing.
why someone becomes completely morally corrupt.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
reasons.
And he's just like, it's because politics as a system is flawed. Power is very bad.
And at the end, what is power but just the manifestation of the fact that as animals you have to be self-interested. Oh, The Wire.
Oh, The Wire. Oh, The
Anyway.
Wire. But yeah, so I think that's not gonna, I don't think I think we're right. I think that it is a binary question and a binary conflict when it boils down, at least the main thrust of the story, because like we said, it's episodic, and the main thrust of the story really I would give to the Stilson arc, because it's like our act 3, it's our biggest, it's our climax. He dies
and cool
because of
echoes of, I think, what we're living through, right? I think Trump has an impact that is not dissimilar to launching the nukes in the aggregate.
At least the fear is very real and
The
very
fear is
there.
real that he'll fucking
the guy's got
run this shit into the ground like he has everything he's ever led.
Any president has the nuclear football codes, it's like at any time shit could go crazy. So because of that is very much the fear of the Cold War. That's why like a movie about the Cold War like Failsafe or something like that, which is Sidney Lumet, that has at the center of that is a very non-binary question about the nature of what it means to be able to choose to take someone's life and the consequences that go along with that. This is a movie that just wants us to understand that if you were to have this power, this could be a possible way in which this like turns out. And for a superpower, it's a pretty shitty one. I'm pretty like, I think that Christopher Walken in it, when Johnny says like, this is not a gift. Like, I know that when he says it's because he's kind of pouting over the fact that he's been given a real shitty like lot in life. His legs barely work. He lost out on the 5 years.
Interesting parallels to
best 5 years of
Doctor
life.
Strange too, because he has the same ending, except unlike Doctor Strange, he does die and his reputation is ruined.
Yeah.
He does the thing that Doctor Strange pretends to do.
And so that's what does make that binary, like it is a slight, it's a binary question, but it still is slightly more interesting than most things that have binary questions, if that makes sense, just because it resolves in a way that is, at the end, we pity him for his superpower. Like anytime we go like, would you want to fly? Were you psychic? If you could change things, these superpowers, that would be awesome. Right. Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit, there's like not really a montage, but there's a bit of like, damn, he just saved that kid, even from his dad, who was like set out on making his kid die by forcing him to go to hockey practice. He convinced the kid, and he got the dad to not do it.
Right.
And even that symbolic victory is
when he stopped a serial killer. Yeah.
Yeah. That symbolic victory is still tempered by, he opens up a newspaper and it says 2 kids died. And then
Just
he looks
not
at
that
it
kid.
and he realizes, oh, I didn't stop it. I just saved a kid. And so that there is a little bit of complexity and gray area there. But
well, yeah, and that is bolstered by he gets all the fan letters from people who want his help. So it's like the Superman conundrum. If you can help, how much do you give of yourself to everyone who needs help in the world?
Right. And so much like Robin Hood, I think the audience is always going to be on Johnny's side in all these decisions. Like he almost perfectly makes every decision correctly. He always appeals to what's the most moral thing to do. He thinks of ways and invents ways in order to stop people who are bad, based off the information we know that he's getting is true, and it is. But, he's never really questioned. He's never really pushed into a corner and said like, yeah, but you have to choose between these 2 things. And guess what? It's not morally, very
There's never a
cut and
dilemma.
dry. Yeah.
Fun fact. Well, maybe everyone knows this, but I just feel like more people should know. Dilemma, di means 2. A dilemma is not just a problem. Dilemma specifically refers to a problem where there are only 2 options and they're both bad. That's a dilemma.
Yeah.
More you know.
Yeah.
Star with a rainbow goes by. I love words that mean very specific things, like penultimate, like second to
That means the
last. Why
second
is
to
there a
last?
word for it? It
I
doesn't
remember
need to
in
exist.
film school, I didn't even know that because I'm not great with words. And I said penultimate meaning the ultimate. And they were like, it means the second to last. And my immediate reaction wasn't to be mad that like at myself for using that word incorrectly.
Like, why
it was
is
like,
that
why
a
the
word?
fuck does that word exist?
Why do we need that word? Yeah, it's
that's a
obviously an
stupid
Abby
word.
Singer.
But, here we
Insular
are.
film talk.
Yeah. That is it.
Yeah.
Abby Singer is the penultimate shot of the day.
Yep.
More
What's
you
the
know.
ultimate? I forget. A Lauren Walker?
Martini.
That's right.
Lauren Walker is a friend of ours.
That's true. That's right.
Abby-
Abe, I also want to send you a screenshot I took. This is one of the few times I wish this was a visual medium. I'll send it over Discord of Tom Skerritt. Tom Skerritt, maybe we can make this the thumbnail for the episode. Tom Skerritt has a fucking hell of a scared face in this movie that I just really can't get over.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing it. That's
Got his wrinkly little chin.
He's like looking off to the left, terrified. What the fuck is this shit? Yeah, he's just that guy. He's one of those guys in acting. A lot of people probably know him if you're,
you know of him.
You know of him, but you've definitely seen him if you watch movies in the 90s.
Yeah.
He's the sheriff in this movie.
So, yeah, a couple more things. I feel like what we're talking about, this is more supporting evidence, I guess, for what we've already established, but I do feel like the lack of subtext or the idea that it has no message is strengthened by the fact that at the last minute, they ADR'd the line, "I love you." The final line of the movie, which if you're familiar with screenwriting, that's a key line. You think about that line a lot. The final line of the movie.
It changes the ending entirely.
Yeah. And the fact that Sarah says, "I love you" wasn't even decided until in the edit. They're like, just get her in the booth and have her say, "I love you." That to me implies heavily that they knew they had no underlying message. Because that is
just a
not
series
a
of
thing
events.
to take flippantly. The married woman with children says to the dying man, "I love you," and they flipped it at the last second. That's just very interesting to me.
I think that's Cronenberg going like, "All right, this is a bummer, man. This is a real bummer."
I mean, he stopped nuclear
does the
holocaust, but you don't get to
audience
feel it. Yeah.
You don't feel it. And yeah, so I think that's him just going, people are going to walk away with like, fuck that movie if I don't do this, because he understood what audiences respond to.
Yeah.
And I think, especially at that time, we're created by and for the times that we are making things in. I think he was right about that. I think it would have been more of a bummer if we didn't get that line. I don't think it's an important line, because as a filmmaker, I kind of see what he's doing and what he's not doing. And it makes me go, well, it's kind of extraneous to the whole. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's a big offer. That's for sure. It makes you feel like, oh, well, he can die happy at least, for whatever that's worth.
And I think they, like you said, it's the way that you know that it's just a story, so to speak, is that they make the dilemma an easy one. They make the choice very simple. And that's even strengthened by the fact that they set up, well, he's already dying. The more he uses his psychic powers, the weaker he gets. He's going to die soon anyway. So it's like, if you ask someone that question, would you kill Hitler if you're going to die soon anyway? Well, then yeah, definitely. I think that would shift the poll very strongly towards why the hell not.
Right. Yeah. I think the doctor tries to appeal to him that we can treat this.
Yeah, the doctor's nuts though, dude. The doctor makes no sense from his own perspective, because, like, for example, the dead zone is in reference to the fact that when he says, when I have psychic visions, now this is years into their acquaintanceship after the point of psychicness being confirmed. The doctor takes it for granted that he's psychic. And he says, in these psychic visions, there's areas I can't see. I call it the dead zone. And he goes, that must represent the future being unestablished. The fact that means, why, you can't just see the future, you can change it. And it's like, why are you surprised? The first time he ever exhibited psychicness, he saved the child from the burning building. He changed the future. What are you talking about?
Made people aware of it.
Yeah. I just didn't, the doctor's dialogue from his own perspective always threw me for a loop.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. He was also kind of an exposition dump for a lot of things.
Well, and then he gave another red herring. It's not strictly a red herring because it doesn't need to be paid off, but I thought it would, which is he's the only one who doesn't take the psychic advice, because he says, your mom's actually alive. You thought she was dead. Here's her phone number. And he calls her and he hangs up and he goes, why didn't you talk to her? And he says, because it wasn't meant to be, which made me think they were going to do like a Final Destination thing where the kid who survived does die in a fire later in a different way, or the boy drowns not in hockey, but in something else. And it's like, no. There's no fate component. He can change the future. It's just
a torture device for Christopher Walken.
Right. He just can change a tiny bit of the future, but it self-corrects. But no, it turns out that the doctor just made a personal choice and it didn't really affect anything. It's just character development from the doctor.
And that's just the rules of the world that Stephen King built. So he built a world with very hard and fast rules.
But I would say the fact that a lot of your moments are used for character development rather than strictly to advance the plot or premise or impart a message, that's what makes it feel like a TV show, because that's what TV does. It's all character development moments.
I mean, it doesn't help that it's episodic and it's like, all right, bring the next case in, bring the next case in. That doesn't help. We don't get to understand like one dilemma deeply. We understand many dilemmas loosely.
That's right.
I guess.
That would be, I think, if you could sum up our review, it would be Dead Zone. You understand many dilemmas loosely. That characterizes the film. So I think we're ready for a final segment, unless you got more.
I don't know. I think that was a good conversation. Okay. I enjoyed that.
That leads us to The Stand.
You stay.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready if you is.
All right. So yeah, should we go 1 to 7, 7 to 1? We're going to go with Shining. Sorry, I just revealed it. We're going to go with top to bottom, right?
Yeah, that's
1
right.
Down to 7.
And
Okay.
this includes everything we've covered thus far in its entirety. So by the end of this podcast, we will have like 100-unit long list of every Stephen King
That's
thing
insane.
in quality
We're never gonna
order,
have 100.
definitively.
We'll see. All right. So hopefully we'll be faster about that when we get to our 100th episode. But 1,
The Shining.
Shining.
Number
Yeah.
2, Stand By Me.
Stand By Me.
Number 3,
3.
Missouri.
4.
Number 4, The
The
Mist.
Mist.
Number 5,
5.
Dead Zone.
It.
Oh!
The first one.
God
you put it
damn
over
it.
it.
Well, I
And
can't
so
take it
then
back.
that
I
makes-
said it. I wanted to fudge it and make it work, but no, it's done.
Yeah, it's fine. The here we are.
Number
and
6.
so obviously for 6, you would be it, and I'd be Dead Zone.
Unless
And
you thought
7.
Dreamcatcher was better than Dead
No,
Zone.
I did. No, I
did
didn't.
not.
So Dreamcatcher, as always.
I
in
think
last
it
place.
is more interesting as an intellectual exercise, but I would rather watch Dead Zone again than watch it
See,
again.
I know that it. Some of the reason I put it above is that I know that the miniseries is a less good version. We haven't covered the other its, but like for a visual medium, Pennywise the Clown and the stuff that they do in that movie are still beg me to look at it longer than the Dead Zone, which is kind of seems like a philosophical movie that I never really got interested in the philosophy of it. So it's just like a kind of a lame duck the whole time.
And I just am appealing to, I think you're forgetting texturally how boring it was from moment to moment when Pennywise wasn't there.
Yeah, I know, but it's also longer, so I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt. And it's tough because Cronenberg is like one of my favorites. I think Cronenberg did a great job. I think that there is more symbolism and interesting stuff going on in the story of it. And I still give it to it.
I'm glad Darabont's rising up because The Mist started low, but that's sort of underrepresentative. Now we're filling out the bottom ranks and it's floating up
Oh man,
like
yeah.
Mist will do.
Well, tell us what you think your list is and who's right and maybe we're both wrong. Maybe Dreamcatcher is actually still secretly the hidden
Flip it,
best
reverse
film.
it.
It's better than The Shining. I'd love to hear that argument from literally anybody.
Maximum Overdrive.
Oh hell yeah. We got I don't know what we'll do next time, but
What should we do next time?
I don't know.
call
I
it.
feel like we got to do we want to call it? Because last time we called it, we got in this hole.
Well, I think we'll
debacle.
just check and see if the film is, gettable.
Yeah, that's fair.
I have the list.
That's fair.
Well, let's see. This was from, I think we could also start, because I like jumping around far in time. You know what I mean?
Time, yeah, because I was gonna say I kind of want to do like Cujo after I was like looking. at it, but that's,
1983
like,
is
literally
really
the same year.
early in his adaptation career, so let's pick something
Yeah.
fairly recent.
Let's do something later. Let's not do any It because we just done It.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's give some time before we. I think we should do It and It 1 or It 1 and 2 pretty close to time together in time, but I still don't think we're there yet.
The Dark Tower, Gerald's Game, Dr. Sleep.
I kind of want to do Well, I could do Dr. Sleep, man.
Julie Ganapathy. Oh, it's another adaptation of Misery. That's cool.
I apologize. You can hear construction happening outside of my.
That's all right.
It just started. So.
I haven't. Apt Pupil? Thinner? You want to do Dr. Sleep? I haven't seen it.
I kind of want to do Dr. Sleep.
All right, then.
Next
We'll
episode.
sleep it up.
We'll sleep it up. Hell yeah.
So it's Shining related, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's like a kind of a sequel.
It's as good as
but
The
there is a
Shining.
book.
That's
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Oh.
Great. Critical response.
Dead Zone.
77% on Rotten Tomatoes. Sounds good.
All right.
do
I
it.
can't wait.
Till next time, my friend.
King.
See? That's the right note. This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.